Welcome to We Articulate Podcast.
I'm Miles.
I'm Daniel, and if you know, you know.
And if you don't, well, ask somebody who does.
How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. I feel like we should start our shows with a date sometimes. I know that it's timestamped somewhere, but for everyone's record, it is Saturday the 6th
I believe
of
it is
November. We could be like a clock at this point.
I feel like people have technology for
People
that.
will
They don't
log
need us.
on to listen to the time at almost 4:20, 4:19.
Yeah, 420.
That's illegal, bud. In where we live, it shouldn't be, but yeah, we'll get to that in a later podcast. So where are we starting off today?
We've had some crazy elections going on here the last couple of days.
Some
What was it, Tuesday?
super funny outcomes.
Yeah, Tuesday we did see some outcomes that were probably a little shocking or jarring to what was anticipated or what was highly thought would happen.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Virginia just get swept completely by Republicans. Right, took the entire.
Glenn Youngkin,
categories.
yeah, a shout out to him, beating Terry McAuliffe.
I think they even took the state legislator back, didn't
They
they?
did.
I mean, it was quite the sweep there in Virginia that had gone blue for the last few election cycles. So it was quite the showing.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a huge shift. You started seeing the shift in the demographics of who voted for what party in 2020, and that shift just continued into the people that voted Republican as opposed to the people that voted Democrat.
Well, I think this goes back to what we had said several podcasts ago, when Steve Bannon had said that you didn't want to get these suburban moms involved because if you did, you would force that situation to go in the direction you didn't want.
Yep.
And I think they pushed suburban moms and the suburban families and households into becoming political. And this is what we see.
Yeah.
Right? This is what we see this coming up, and this is what we see happening is the Republicans just absolutely dominating across the board there.
Which is funny. They're saying, the liberals and the Republicans at this point are saying that this race opened up the GOP's playbook for the 2022 elections.
Yeah.
And it has to do with education, which is funny.
I think that was the biggest point, right? I think the biggest thing we saw was Republicans didn't deviate off of course this time, right? They weren't playing this defensive position of let's counteract whatever the Democrats are saying, right? They stayed on topic, and they stayed on topics that were obviously important to the people and the constituents that they were representing.
And what were those topics? Just for those that don't, I mean, this was huge, but for those that don't know.
Obviously, the major one that we had seen was this whole CRT in schools being taught, right? The critical race theory. That was one of the biggest sticking points I think we saw. We also saw the issue of like trans,
the LGBTQ
rights,
and was huge.
The way they wanted to integrate that in schools. I think we saw that was also a very large factor.
And we can all throw this into this idea that Terry McAuliffe came out and was very open to the fact that he did not think parents should be a part of a child's education. That they should not have a say in what their children are taught. And there's some validity. Like, I understand what he was trying to get at, but the way they approached it, and then the way they defended it, they didn't even try to make it right. They simply doubled down on this idea that parents should have no play. Let the government control what they teach your children. They're not your kids, they're the government's kids, so why should you be able to have any say over them?
Well, clearly there needs to be a different sort of standard set, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, and it needs to be, I guess you would say, if you're going to use a public school or a public education, there has to be some sort of regulation of what is and what is not allowed.
Absolutely.
Right? And we've talked about CRT before and how we don't see...
Not much, but we have, yeah.
Like,
personally, we have. We've not necessarily on the podcast.
We talked about it a little bit on a podcast before, and there is some validity in teaching like a CRT-ish, but pushing it to the point where it's black against white or race against
Oh, for
race
sure.
and demonizing one or the other and victimizing the other, right, was not the way to go. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? Is what they're seeing, what we're seeing here, is they wanted to teach those aspects, right? If you wanted to teach history just based upon historical facts, nobody's going to complain about that.
No, and
right?
that's what people are arguing. The people that are anti-CRT are simply trying to make as if racism doesn't exist. I remember growing up in school, I was never taught racism was never a thing. I remember being taught about slavery. I remember being taught that it was a bad thing. There was nothing about it that made me think back and say, "Oh, black people were treated so greatly." I didn't come away with that impression. So this idea that if you're against the CRT, that you're anti-black or pro-white supremacy, I think is insane, personally.
Right, and I think that was like the biggest issues that we had seen.
Yeah. Oh,
right. Yeah. And again, this is why we kind of go to that situation. If you're going to have public education, right, that is directly funded by the government or upheld by the government, enforced, or you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Essentially, it is forced, right? The government is saying if you have to educate your child.
It's true.
The government became involved in public education, which I don't think they should have. But we got to that point, so if that's the case, then there has to be some hard lines set about what is and what is not acceptable in a classroom for kids.
Yeah, one of the biggest arguments towards the end, before the election, was the Democrats going on, I guess what you'd call the offense, and saying that the Republicans were pro-book burning based on these materials that were found in the classrooms that parents wanted to remove.
Which are horrendous. They were horrendous topics.
Before you know what those were, it sounds horrible, right? You're like, oh, they're trying to take away literature. That is like a book burning, and you can, take that picture as however you will, but it doesn't sound good, right? Until you dive into it, and they're like, what books are they actually trying to remove? And these are like pornographic
material.
Just stuff that you don't find in a third grader's class, right?
And they're encouraging behavior that is highly inappropriate, especially for children with underdeveloped mindsets, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They don't fully grasp the concepts, and so to put that in front of them, especially with the impressionable mindset that they have, without being able to understand or fully recognize what they're seeing or what's going on,
Yeah, you're not going to put an X-rated film in front of, students in grade school, right?
Yeah, you would expect to see an increase in deviancy.
So basically the parents that are like, no, we don't want to have them watch porn when they're third graders. We're not sitting here saying we need to ban movies, just there's a right place and a right time for everything, and that is obviously something that is college and up, right?
Yeah, by all means, you can have these books. They weren't upset about the book being a book.
No,
they were
no,
upset
no.
about the book being in a school institution where anybody can get their hands on it, right?
Yes.
In a situation where maybe it should have been a public library or some other area where at least the access was a little bit more restricted, so that underage or minors would not be able to get their hands on something like that.
Remember when, I know movie stores are not as common as they used to be, but even the one here in Fremont, there was a section dedicated to 18 and older.
Yes.
So no child could go in there and just pick out whatever they wanted to, right? You had to be a certain age and able to get these, and I don't see any problems with that. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. But I think a big thing with Youngkin, right, was not only did he campaign and he stuck to the topics, he didn't let Trump really kind of get involved, which is one of the big, I think, sticklers.
Right?
I
think it's
one
fascinating.
of the big sticklers. Mm-hmm. But he also campaigned in areas that were considered unwinnable, right? He was on the ground, and he didn't, right? These areas that normally Republicans would just kind of wash their hands of, saying, we're never going to take this district or this area, or we're not going to get the populace to back us. They just kind of wrote them off as there's no point in spending money here in order to campaign. And I think we saw Youngkin do a really good job of actually getting to those communities and interacting and attempting to try to figure out what they need and how to solve those problems for them.
Oh, he kept the race very local. it was all local issues. He didn't bring in anybody from the outside. There was nobody national that he invited to campaign with him. It was all local issues. It was local taxes. It was local schools, local crime,
DMV policy. Like,
which is,
he kept it very tight.
And it was a beautifully run campaign.
It was, and it was the smartest thing that I think he could have done, right? Bringing in like a Trump or a Ted Cruz or a Ron DeSantis, right? You bring in the national politics that come with it, and I think you bring in that culture war asset that you really didn't want to bring.
Nope.
And I think by keeping it as small and local and kind of more intimate, I think we see the ability for him to continue to power that race through on his own power.
And that's what happened. And you saw Terry McAuliffe do just the opposite.
Yeah, he brought in everybody, right? He brought all the guns.
Which is hilarious.
He had to bring in Obama. He had to bring in Kamala Harris. He had to bring in Joe Biden. Right? Yep. I was surprised he didn't bring in Stacey Abrams.
She campaigned for him, but not in the there. State. Yeah.
But I was actually shocked. I was shocked that he didn't bring her into it and attempt to do something.
He might have. Now that I think about it, he might have.
I don't know. I didn't see her.
But there was everybody under the sun on the Democrat side went and pulled for this guy, and he still lost. So what does that say about the pull of all these big figureheads that are in?
I think we've already seen that, right? We've seen the polling, especially concerning President Biden.
Oh,
right. The polling, he is. The only person who's pulled lower than him in modern presidents, I think, is Donald Trump. Right, and that was a lot of media hatred towards him.
So right? What does that say, right? Like Donald Trump, a lot of people can say, yeah, he was kind of an asshole. It was easy to dislike him, right?
Yeah.
If he's the only guy that's beating you in polling, my goodness.
I mean, we all understand that Trump was a very bombastic.
Oh, yeah.
He was essentially a bully kind of figure, right?
Yes.
He came in to bully all the talking heads, to bully the media, to kind of stomp around and break things.
The bull in the china shop, yeah.
He was there to make sure that everybody understood that there is consequences to doing what you've been doing for so long, right? Mm-hmm. And now everybody's recognized that there is a chance that this other head can kind of come in and take an election. And so now I think everybody's kind of having to learn that they have to be more on their P's and Q's,
Yeah, kind of watch what they're doing a little bit, yeah.
They're a little bit more intimidated in kind of watching what they're saying or what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
But
I love it.
Right now, I mean, seeing these elections go the way they're going, especially how close New Jersey was.
So that was a toss-up far longer than anybody had ever imagined.
Well, New Jersey should never have even been close.
Never been. So
never even been close.
There's 1 million more registered Democrats in New Jersey than there are Republicans. So the race never should have been close as it was.
No, and to see it be so hotly contested as it was really an eye-opener, saying that there is no such thing as an unwinnable county or district or state. There's no such thing anymore, right?
Well, I think
they have broken the narrative. The media has caused this frenzy, and there's so much of a cultural war and effect going on right now that I don't think that anything is unwinnable at this point in time.
I think people, unless you're a dedicated, diehard Democrat, people are sick and tired of these mandates. They're tired of being told what to do, what they can't do. Where do you wear a mask? Where do you not wear a mask? Let me see your papers. I don't think anybody appreciates that.
Do you have papers?
I mean, that's what it is, though. Like, remember when we were told this vaccine was going to be the end-all, cure-all to everything, right?
Yeah.
This was supposed to end the pandemic, and yet somehow here we are with 80% of the American population with at least one shot.
Yeah, and I think 65% or 66% that are double.
That are double jabbed. And we've had more deaths this year than we did all of last year. And that happened, a month or two ago?
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of the highest places now are, like Denver, for example, Colorado.
Democratic
one of the highest vaccination rates, and yet their hospitals are apparently overwhelmed from, they say it's all the unvaccinated. But who's passing? I mean, if everybody is vaccinated, who's passing on this virus at this point?
I can never tell you.
I don't know.
I'm uneducated.
I don't know.
I've only got a few years of college under my belt.
It's strange. It's weird. You'd figure at the end of all this. I mean, do we see a light at the end of the tunnel? Is it finally here? I think enough people are sick of it.
I think that I think people have gotten fed up with it, right? I saw a video on TikTok of some lady boarding a plane and the guy that was sitting to the side of her, I think, was not wearing his mask properly or something, and she was throwing this huge fit, right? She was spazzing and one of the stewardesses was attempting to calm her down and try to let her know that like there was no other seats in the plane, and the lady was saying how she can't sit by this guy and they need to find her different accommodations.
Oh yeah.
And eventually it got to the point where the pilot came out.
He's like, stop.
And the pilot had her removed from the plane and then apologized for her behavior to the rest of the people in the plane, saying, you know, I apologize for this lady and her setting us behind, but we'll get you on the ground as soon as we can, you know.
So I'm gonna make a bold assumption here and say that lady was probably triple stabbed.
She was definitely doubled.
So
she had said that. She made that very clear that she had been doubled, and he was. Oh, that was the problem. It was that he was not vaccinated. She had asked him, and he was not vaccinated, and she was double jabbed. And she said that
there you go.
She was very concerned about her safety and her health, and it was federally illegal for them to sit her beside a man on this plane.
Well, it's not yet. I don't.
Well, there is no legality behind any of this.
Well, that's what I mean. It's coming.
I don't think it will be, especially 2022 coming up.
I hope you're
right. With 2022 coming up, dude, there's no way that Democrats are able to hold on to anything. You will see President Biden. I was about to say, Biden.
Biden.
We're going to see President Biden become a lame duck president here in the next year. He kind of already was. Well, with Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin.
They just passed an infrastructure, which we were talking about this earlier. Do we really know what's in that infrastructure bill?
I've seen a ton of numbers thrown around for infrastructural, essentially like different avenues of what they wanted to do.
Yes.
But I have not seen the totality of exactly where that's going to go.
No, I haven't either.
And we haven't seen anything from the... what is it, the CBO?
CBO, and that's on the bigger bill.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken.
We have yet to see what that is, but they just threw back the, what is it, so parental and, what am I thinking of?
Oh, you better think hard.
When maternity leave and paternal
leave. Did they put that back in there?
They're going to throw that back in, right? Which is a sticking point for Joe Manchin,
and that's I get it. I absolutely get it. I've survived. I think all of us, this whole country, survived. People are up in arms about this stuff, but you got to ask yourself the way the U.S. has been running up until this year and last year. I guess this pandemic screwed everything up, but people wanted to move here for a reason. We had the greatest economy in the world for a reason.
Yeah,
and some people are going to say, oh, it's horrible to live here, but, I mean, do you really want to go live somewhere else?
Well, if it was obviously that horrible, you wouldn't have this rush at the border.
You wouldn't have
this massive amount of immigration trying to get through. Mm-hmm. Because clearly it is the greatest country to live in still. Whether that remains for very long, I think is under question.
So this was funny. I told you about this, and I had a feeling, I know we're kind of going back to the Virginia elections, with the rush of the border, right? So Hispanic population is coming over. Mm-hmm. The exit polling, early results are showing the Hispanic population has made a huge swing to the GOP side. Did you see
some of the videos that were coming out about them asking different Hispanic people?
Yes, I did. I did.
They turned me Republican.
Yep.
Right. This whole thing has turned me Republican. I mean, that's got to be the most damning thing that they could have happen to them at the end of this cycle, right? Well,
keep in mind,
this is an off-season election, right? This is an off-year election that is very telling for what comes next, right?
Beautiful.
As soon as January hits, I mean, they're already starting, but when January hits, you're going to see this mass push in politics. because they've got to set up for 2022, and knowing that you're losing the Hispanic population, right? Seeing that 13% of the black population voted for Youngkin, I think these are very dangerous numbers for Democrats. And if it continues in this route,
I think it does.
They're in for a very big shock and a very bad position.
Well, you got to remember what people come into this country, what they see is the textbook American dream, right? They want to be able to work. They want the white picket fence. They want the house. They want to work. And they want to keep their money, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these people coming over and they're like, well, I made all this money. And they look at their paycheck and they're like, holy cow, the government just took almost half of what I just made. Do you really think they're happy about that?
Especially when they're talking about things like unrealized capital gains tax.
Which is insane. Did we talk about... That was
several weeks. I don't think we ever really hit on it.
I don't think we did either.
That's absolutely astounding.
Taxing something that doesn't exist but might exist.
Yeah, right.
If you were to
if I potentially were to sell this, right?
Then we're gonna tax you.
But how would you? How do you write a tax plan?
You can't.
Based upon something that there is. You don't know exactly what that's going to actually total out to.
Yeah, not at all.
You know,
you guess.
At the end of the year, right? If I hold my stocks, you tax me on what I hold, and then 6 months later that market drops out.
I mean,
do I get my money back?
Do you get reimbursed?
Right? Do I get my money back, or am I just?
I think you're just out
of luck. You know.
And dude, that right there is what's causing the immigration or the people that are coming over here to turn Republican. They're not coming over here for the free healthcare. Let me just put that right now. People are not coming here for free healthcare. Okay?
We don't have free healthcare.
We don't have free healthcare.
But they're trying.
They're trying to make it about that.
They're not even being genuine about that. Right?
At all.
You've got like AOC on the squad, right? That run around Bernie Sandering all over the place, right? They're Bernie Sandering all over the place, saying about how much they want this universal health care and all these benefits, right? And all this free stuff, free education. But when it comes down to voting for them,
nope.
Where do you see them? They vote present, right? They say, well, I don't want to say anything right now. I'll just say that I'm here.
Yep.
Sorry. So even the ones that sit there and scream how diehard they are about free everything and how much they want for the American people, they don't even believe in what they say, right? Yeah. And that's one reason why I love Jimmy Dore, right? Jimmy Dore.
Who's Jimmy Dore?
Jimmy Dore he's a comedian on the left, right? And he's very, very heavily into politics, right? But even he is at least honest and genuine about the ability to do a universal healthcare, right? He agrees with it. He thinks it should be done. But he's even sitting here calling out these progressives that are screaming their heads off, right? Saying how much they want it, right?
Yep.
He's calling a spade, right? They don't actually believe in what they say they believe.
No, not at all.
When it comes down to actually voting, they won't because they know that their constituents would throw them out.
Yep. That's funny. Bill Maher, he's also fairly liberal, but he tends to be more libertarianism at the end of the day. But Bill Maher has been known to be very liberal.
A left libertarian, yes.
And he's calling out all these liberals that are just pretending, right? This is all they're putting on a facade. They're putting on an act. The most recent kind of rant he went on, I guess if you call it a rant, was this idea that in his mind, the pandemic's over, okay? He says left states, or I guess it'd be red states and blue states. He said there's a huge difference when you go to those states. Red states, everything is normal, right?
Yeah,
blue states, you're walking on glass everywhere. You're putting on your mask everywhere. You're showing your cards everywhere. Yeah, it's a night and day difference. And he's like, what is the point? The pandemic's over. We've got vaccines out there. Yeah, everything is fine.
And that's the thing, right? Is if people want to take them, they will take them.
Bam.
If they don't want to take them, they won't. And they'll suffer the consequences, and that's their decision, right? That's their choice. But running around and screaming vaccine mandate, you're not going to convince anybody on your side now,
no,
right? You're only going to make that division become more clear.
100%. And I noticed that at work. I noticed that heavily at work. So I work with a bunch of Hispanics. We both do, for that matter.
Yeah.
I can tell you, they don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah, I mean,
nobody wants to be told what to do, man.
Especially when you're told that you're in a free country where you can do what you want, right? You have freedom of speech, freedom to exercise your religion, your beliefs, and do kind of what you want to do within the law. people don't want to be told that if you don't get jabbed, you're going to lose your livelihood. Not only will you lose your livelihood, you're risking your family's livelihood. You are risking your friends, your status in your social status.
And the people on the left are going to say, well, Joe Biden made a joke about it, right? You're not going to kill me with your COVID, but if you got the vaccine, you're going to be fine, bud.
No, well, that's what they're saying.
My COVID's not going to do anything to you, I promise you. The likelihood of you getting any kind of injury from it is, I think,
the most disingenuous part is that most people have already had COVID, whether it's
true.
Been documented or not.
It's absolutely true.
We're not seeing the same kind of case numbers, right? And I think that's just because we've seen this kind of clash between
the herd immunity,
right? This herd immunity, right? We're seeing this vaccine immunity along with this natural immunity, and I don't think we're seeing the same case numbers because the vast majority of people, over 70%, have had it or gotten the shot for it.
Yep.
And I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think we've gotten to a point where we're okay, you know?
So the Pfizer, they came out with a pill, kind of like Merck, and their CEO, Pfizer's CEO, says he thinks the pandemic's going to be over in January.
Well, I think what's even funnier is a lot of people have been pointing out that the Pfizer pill is a lot like Mectin, right? It's essentially a more expensive version of the Mectin.
What? I thought that was a horse dewormer.
You know,
do we look like livestock?
Do we need to talk about Aaron Rodgers?
Oh no, he's a horrible person. I've been told.
Have you seen any of the clips? Have you seen any of the things about Aaron Rodgers and what he was saying?
He sounds like a horrible person.
I mean, dear sweet baby Jesus, that man. He's funny. Based. He was based.
I love it. I think it's hilarious. He is all against this wokeness, and he's very vocal about it, and it's hilarious.
I mean, I think that was the greatest part of seeing this, right?
Yeah,
how dedicated and fed up he was, right? That eventually it got to the point where he's got to come out and say something about it, right? And I think that says something.
So, for the backstory, for those that don't know, Aaron Rodgers received some kind of immunotherapy, and
he essentially took the Joe Rogan.
Exactly, but he came down with COVID, and now he can't play in this game against Kansas City tomorrow coming up. And people were up in arms in that, right? Like, how could you allow yourself to not be vaccinated, and then you got COVID, and
you put everybody at risk.
Everybody, but what's hilarious is the week before that, one of his wide receivers, Devontae Adams, who's fully vaccinated, also came down with COVID.
But it's to protect you, to protect me, that protects...
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, what's the difference? Right?
Yeah.
He's going to be fine. I'm gonna go out there and I'm going to make this assumption, too. Aaron Rodgers is going to be just fine.
He is just fine. He was
that.
on this podcast, essentially, and...
He was like, everything's
the man
fine.
Was ranting. I mean, he was ranting. He was spewing what he thought was truth.
I've been told if you get COVID, you're gonna die laughing because you're gonna be on a ventilator. There is no coming back.
Yeah, I mean that's the way they make it seem, right?
They should just RIP
the fear porn that has been spread is
way too much.
And I think that's why you see a lot of people on the left, or I should say more the far left, that are just hysterical about this.
Oh yeah,
right? Because that's all they see on the media is this hyped, drummed up
COVID, yep.
COVID. Everybody's dying. This is COVID. That's COVID, right? If you scrape your finger, COVID. You fell down, COVID. Hey. Right? I had a headache, COVID. I had a toenail fall off, COVID. It was everything. Like, it just, no matter what it was, no matter what new symptom they could possibly throw on it, it was COVID.
Do you remember when COVID first came out? There was like a new symptom every day.
Yeah,
there was a never-ending list of symptoms. It was like a joke.
It's almost like that person, right, who goes on to like WebMD and they're like, type up headache, and it just goes, "You have a brain tumor."
They're like,
and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh no!" And there's just this meltdown, right? Because they had to look on WebMD. You know, it was the same thing, right? It was like this headache could have been related to anything.
Holy cow! Anything,
but it just
right?
like WebMD was like, give them the most extreme thing, they'll keep coming back, right? Keep checking the symptoms. And so that was like what the media did, right? They just kept hyping it.
That's their job, which is funny.
People are locking their kids in the house for 2 years until they're able to finally get these kids jabbed up, right? 5 to 11. They're just finally releasing it for 5 to 11, and parents are like they're making these reaction TikTok videos with their child going, "Look, I can finally leave the house. I can finally hang out with my friends because I can finally get the shot." Like, do you understand the damages we are doing to our children? The mental damage that you have caused these kids for 2 years. I mean, we've seen suicide rates spike up. We've seen depression rates spike up.
Oh, yeah.
And we've done all this against our better judgment.
Yeah. The science was pretty clear early on that kids really weren't affected, at least with the early stages. I mean, the early variants,
we're still sitting
of Delta
below 300 kids under the age of like 13 or 14.
Insane. So the recent polling, and obviously it's polling, take what you will, only a third of parents are actually going to get their kids between the ages of 5 and 11 jabbied.
Yeah,
only a third, 33%.
Alyssa Milano did a poll.
It's not very good.
And it was, are you going to get your child jabbed up? Yes, no, or maybe. And like 115 or 120,000 people responded, and 94%. 94% said no.
Oh, not even maybe.
No, it was just straight no.
Yeah, that's
like, I mean, I think that shows you most parents are not, they're not willing to do something that's at best experimental.
That's honestly,
I mean, there is no data. There is no long-term data study on this.
Zero. And okay, there are people that are going to say there is, right? This has been decades in the making, and if that's true, this wouldn't have been an emergency use.
Well, it's not even that. It's the fact that this vaccine was essentially created, a little over a year?
Oh, no. When Donald Trump said that he was going to get a vaccine by the end of the year, people said it was going to be a miracle. It wasn't going to happen. They had experts come on and tell us.
They started researching this in, I want to say it was March, right?
There you go.
March?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So we're sitting a year and a half.
It's not very long.
And it was only ever emergency authorized since, what was it, November? December?
Right after the election.
Right, exactly. So we're talking about mid-November. Yeah. So we're sitting almost a year since it was actually released to the public.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a very long test study for data, at least.
No, and especially for children. Like, you can make the argument for the people that are at ultra high risk, right? If you're going to get cancer from this thing, you probably don't care if you get COVID and you're going to die, right? You take your chances of getting cancer down the road than you would dying with cancer, or dying from COVID, I'm sorry. So I mean, for the people that are at high risk of getting COVID and perishing from it, they probably don't care, right?
They would essentially take that.
So
they're mitigating the risk.
Exactly. But for a child, I mean, those
odds of that are
way flipped, right?
Yeah, they're extremely low. I think it was like a 0.000
statistically was 0
1 or something. I mean, yeah,
which was insane.
I mean, the likelihood of it was astronomically low.
Yeah, so I know in the state of Nebraska, for example, a child was more likely to die in a car wreck than to have any severe symptoms, let alone die.
Let alone even recognize that they had COVID.
Exactly. So, I mean, at that point, what do you say? If this is for public safety, should we just not let kids ride in cars? Because, I mean, they might get in a car wreck.
Well, there was somebody that was trying to equate. You have to have your seatbelt on when you're driving, right? And it's the same thing, right, for the vaccine. And like,
no,
but
it's not the same thing.
Does the other person have to wear their seatbelt in order to protect me?
That's not how it works, right?
That's what people were trying to. They were trying to make this false equivalency between the two.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, well, you have to wear it and I have to wear it because if I don't wear it, your safety is in jeopardy. Well, how was that?
Because if we don't both have seatbelts, I mean, if you're as a passenger don't have a seatbelt, you might fly over and hit me, which causes me to have a brain tumor from that headache that we had talked about from
WMD.
The internet.
WebMD.
So yes, exactly. They're trying to say it's two different things. And the argument I say to that even is, well, you can take your seatbelt off. Once you get this vaccine, you can't just unstab yourself. It's there. And I know they say it dissipates and it disappears, but I mean, you have to ask yourself, how many times have drug corporations lied to put profits ahead of you?
And I think that goes back to the next point, right? Is there people are running around saying that this thing is free, right?
Free.
But it's not, right? Our tax money is paid for all of this.
Yes.
All of it.
It's not free.
And not only that, right? When have we ever seen Big Pharma get widespread immunity, right? Absolute immunity from any kind of causation that could inevitably come from this, right? We have excused Big Pharma from having to take responsibility for anything negative that comes off of this.
Yeah, you can't sue them
when have
for
we
any
seen
of the,
something like this?
I don't think it's ever happened.
Right? Not only we paid for it, okay? We paid for it, and then if you get injured from it, you can't even sue for compensation because, and then they're going to try and tell you that you have to do it, right?
You have. So that's the worst part about it.
There is no winning essentially for you, right? If you don't do it, you lose your job and your livelihood. If you do it and you get injured from it, there is no recourse for you to get compensated for that damage.
Mm-hmm. So an interesting analogy, and this is probably not the most extreme, but it's pretty extreme. So up until recently, China mandated that you can only have, was it one child
policy
per house, and it was for the better good, right? It was done for the public, right?
Yeah.
And then they upped it because they realized we should probably just let people have babies. It's still capped. I don't know what it's capped at now.
I think it's 3.
But I mean, for those of you that say, do everything for the public health, at what point, where's the line going to be drawn at for the quote unquote public health? If we were to get into a situation like China and say you can only have one baby, this whatever child you want to have after that, we're gonna make sure you don't have it. Are you gonna cry about that? But it's for public health. I mean, where's the line gonna? It's kind of an extreme outcome, but that's the slope you go down.
It's not something that they got to worry about. We've already seen the population, especially across America, declining rapidly. Right, people are not having kids.
Nope.
Right, and I think a lot of that is from this scream about climate change. Right.
Oh yeah.
Having kids is bad. You having kids is killing the environment. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't have that, right? Along with this whole idea of feminism, right? They're coupling all of these ideologies together.
Very strange.
And prevent it's essentially dissuading people from having kids, from having families, from building communities and building objectives to
looked down upon
together. Yes,
it absolutely is looked down upon in the left society. Anything to do with children is almost like a bad thing.
Yeah, and they're saying it, and then I think the worst part, right, is they're saying we're not going to have kids, but your kids are our kids because we take them in a public school. And we indoctrinate them.
Yeah, we're going to do whatever we want to them. Yep.
And I think that's the worst idea, right? Is they're going to indoctrinate your children, and they don't have to worry about having kids because they'll take yours.
It's like the Catholic Church. What? No, I didn't say that. I mean, shame on them. There's a whole bunch of stories coming out about them. That's a very depressing.
It's not good. I mean, it's not. It's definitely not good.
Lots of cover-ups. Just here in the state of Nebraska, there's a bunch. I was listening to news the other day. There's, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of cases going back tens of years.
Yeah, I mean,
it's pretty sad.
When you let it go unchecked, when you let things go unchecked, it's essentially the outcome or the result of what you're going to see.
It's the same concept, though. This idea that they control your children, and that's exactly what the left is trying to do: is control your children, because you don't know what's best for your kids.
Hitler said that, right? He had Hitler's views, right? I'm not making a comparison between the left and and Hitler, right? But that was Hitler's goal, right?
Yeah.
If you control the kids, they would turn on their parents and turn their parents in because you had indoctrinated these young minds that were impressionable, right? They didn't understand morality or right from wrong 100%. If you can control that, they would flip on their parents and sell their parents out to the government for whatever was deemed necessary for the greater good.
And my goodness, I'd like to think people are opening their eyes up to that a little bit.
They have been. I mean, I think you see that. You see that a lot, especially with this CRT, right? When we go back to the beginning of this podcast, we see a lot of people there's
a lot of backlash.
They've woken up, they've heard enough, they've seen enough. Their kids coming home telling them that I've been told that I am I am an awful person for being white, or I am a victim because I'm black, and no matter what I do, I can never succeed, right? I think these parents are finally hurt enough.
Crazy, man. Condoleezza Rice made it the funniest thing on The View when she came on, and she just completely denounced the whole concept of CRT. Yeah. And they were shocked on that show.
It's not the greatest topic to have, right?
No,
this is not the grounds to have an argument on, right? We should talk about having the conversation of what's right and wrong and what happened in history.
Correct.
And let it be that.
Yes. And it's hard. I get it. People are going to say, well, the victor always writes history. That's true. But there is just one. I mean, there's
multiple sides of this, and you can find them if you look.
Yeah.
Right? If you look for what you are studying, you can find those sides. And you could essentially disseminate and determine what is the correct story.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like we have to think for ourselves. Sometimes. No, I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit.
I mean, it is all very flustering and overwhelming at times. I mean, the sphere that we're in has gotten to be so toxic.
And this is kind of what we were kind of discussing earlier. Do you feel like there's something happening in the country? Like something, I feel like people, their nerves are up. The anxiety seems to be up. Everybody seems to be on edge. And that might be worldwide. I have a feeling it probably is. Are we reaching ahead? Is something going to happen from all this? Or does it slowly melt away into the background? And
the way the media is hyping right now and continues to go, I don't see tensions calming or easing.
I don't either.
It's just not very likely.
It's very strange.
I mean, look at this. We got the Kyle Rittenhouse trial going on, right?
Oh, well, yeah, we haven't even discussed this. This is a fascinating trial.
The way the way it looks right now is that Kyle most likely will get off on all charges. Maybe they catch him on a gun charge.
They might.
Right? Maybe. And I think that's a very far stretch. But the way the media is playing this right now is the prosecution is slam dunking.
Yeah.
And
which is funny.
Right? And so they're setting the tone for people to be angry about the outcome if there is a not guilty charge, right? They're essentially setting the hype for more riots, right? They're never doing anything to actually ease the tension. They continue to keep their foot on the pedal.
Do you think it'll happen in all the cities that claimed they wanted to defund the police, and then when the vote time came, they were like, "Nah, screw that, dude." we really
Minnesota or
Minnesota. It was Minnesota. It was where the city of George Floyd.
Yes.
They voted overwhelmingly. They were like, "We're not going to defund the police." I know we said we were going to, but
they tried, right? They made that little attempt last year,
and they did. It was all talk, though.
The crime rate went through the roof. I mean, people were getting carjacked in the daylight and they were just told by the government, right? They were told by the city officials, just give them what they want. Just give them what they want, right? Maybe we can send you, what were they going to send them?
I don't know.
A social worker?
Oh, yeah.
Here, take this social worker to de-escalate the situation.
A de-escalation officer, right? No, but he just stole my car. Okay, we're going to talk about how that makes you feel. Come on, man.
Let's discuss this. So what happened
next? Just give me my car back. That's all I want. They're like, no. They probably really needed that car. Okay?
They obviously needed it more than you did, right? Equity. As they sent it to a chop shop to get
equity, bud.
Broken down into pieces
That's
and
what
sold.
We're going for.
But they were clearly doing this because they needed bread.
That's what I was about to say. AOC, man. Exactly, yep. They're stealing all of your stuff because they're really hungry, and that watch you got.
That guy that just got jumped and beat down and nothing taken from him, right? Just beat up because he was white or he was Asian, right?
That happened a lot last
year. That was because of bread and food and necessity and needing money and things.
Because violence is the answer if it involves food.
Apparently.
We're gonna go with that.
Apparently.
But they rejected it. The voters said, "No, we're going to keep our police."
Yeah.
Everything, and I know there was more than just Minneapolis that voted for that. That was just one example. That was the biggest example because it was such a large city.
Well, New York City, they elected
Adams.
And Adams
I
was
forget his first name. Eric Adams, maybe?
Eric Adams, I think is correct. And he was ex-police officer. He was talking about how he was going to go hard for the police, right? He was going to refund them. He was going to give them money. He was going to give them more training, more people, more personnel. I mean,
and he was voted in like 65 to 35%.
Yeah, over Silwa,
who was very
weird.
He was super left.
No, Silwa was a Republican.
No, I don't think he was. Was he really? I don't
think Silwa was a Republican.
I think he was super progressive.
He was just really weird. I mean,
he was weird.
He tried to take his cat voting, and they wouldn't let him go inside the building, and then he started melting down.
Wait, what? For
yeah,
real?
Yes.
His cat?
He was trying to take his cat with him to go vote at the polls, and they said he couldn't.
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty funny. So as you're looking up, because I don't know. I guess I wasn't paying that close. I imagined Eric Adams was gonna win. One of the first things he said he was going to do, though, was revisit the vaccine mandate for the federal workers, like the police and the fire departments there.
Yeah, he was the Republican nominee.
He was?
He was the Republican nominee.
You guys really need to do a better job at electing your nominees.
You definitely, especially in New York.
I mean, come on, man.
I mean, it's going to be a hard enough campaign to win in New York, let alone with somebody who is maybe a little unstable. I don't know.
At least make it like a dog. A dog would be cooler.
At least it dictates a more loyal creature.
Oh, that sounded like a sexist thing. Everything does now. Come on. We're in 2021, but everything has an underlying meaning.
Obviously.
Unless you're progressive, and then everything is okay.
Well, you can do no wrong if you're
progressive.
You
can do no wrong.
Obviously.
Yeah. Greta Thunberg.
Greta,
blah blah.
You can talk about Greta now because she's over 18 and criticize.
No, she was in her own way criticizing Biden and all the climate people.
They're not doing enough,
which is hilarious. The Build Back Better plan, she was making fun of by saying it's the blah blah blah.
Well, I think people don't understand this either.
Good for her,
right? She wants everything oil related to end
gone
right now.
Over. Zero.
And she doesn't understand if you were to do anything even close, right? If you were to cut 70% and just use 30% based on fossil fuels.
Not possible.
Right. Do you understand the mass amount of life that would be lost?
Gone. Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of people would die.
Well, some people would be okay with that.
You wouldn't have any way to get around. You wouldn't have any way to move product back and forth. All right. The cities would collapse instantly within a week or two. They would just collapse.
Yeah. So even when Joe Manchin was being bombarded by protesters recently, and they were saying, the U.S. has got to cut climate emissions, and we've got to make sure to eliminate. You're killing us as the future generations, right? And one of the things he said was the U.S. has done by far more than any other country in the history of the world in regards to cutting greenhouse gas emissions.
Mm-hmm.
And the response to that was, well, you got to do more so we can do what?
So we can let China continue to build more coal factories?
And India and Russia.
Right, these underdeveloped nations, these nations that are coming up in development, they're going to use a lot more of this fossil fuel. Right, because they're still trying to establish a technological advancement in their country, right? And they don't have the ability to build these greenhouse or these green efficient sorts of technology.
We don't have enough resources in order to do that even. I know the lithium is in super high demand right now just for the batteries, and we simply don't have enough lithium for the cars they're talking about building.
Well, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem here, right? Is that nobody in this entire world is technologically advanced enough to actually make green energy.
We kind of are.
No, we're not. I mean,
nuclear.
Yeah, but nuclear is that's a toxic point.
I know.
We can't talk about that.
We talked about that on a previous podcast. That is the one way you can do it.
Yes.
Is with nuclear power,
and like I said, there's always we said this before. I think is that there's always ways to make nuclear more. At least to make it safer.
And why hasn't that been a part of the conversation? Like, honestly, is it just because people are scared of it, or in my personal opinion, it doesn't
Chernobyl.
fit? It doesn't fit their narrative.
Well, I think it's because they talk about Chernobyl. They talk about the Fukushima, right?
Yeah.
These plants that had these meltdowns, right? We can't have the honest conversation because everybody is still afraid of what nuclear would happen if something were to melt down, right?
Like, stuff happens. I don't mean to downplay those events. It's
very rare, right? We have more oil spills. We've had more oil spills or pipeline explosions than we've ever had meltdowns of nuclear facilities, and we've had those around for quite some time.
A long
So I don't
time.
understand why we're not having this conversation when clearly we get more energy and more efficiency from these nuclear facilities than we ever possibly could from doing something like coal or oil.
So a report I read recently was the only way the Earth can survive based on the power consumption that we require, especially like you were saying for these upcoming nations, they're going to need power, was for micro nuclear reactors. Yeah, and it's the only way if they're serious about these climate goals, you need to start looking away from these solar panels and these wind panels. You need to invest in nuclear power.
I would love to have a conversation with like a nuclear physicist or somebody that was somebody who's got the experience or the necessary knowledge in this atmosphere.
There would be a lot of big words.
Oh, I'm sure there would be. You would have to break that down.
I would feel pretty stupid after about a minute.
$20 words would have to come down to like 5.
Yeah.
But maybe we could have that conversation with somebody that we could break it down for, the average mind, right?
There is. And there are people out there. I mean, I think even Albert Einstein, in his greatest wisdom, could have a normal conversation with somebody.
I don't think so. Right? I think that's the biggest problem with people that have...
That would have been great.
People that have extremely high IQs have problems having conversation with those that aren't on the same level.
That's true. You can,
but it's very difficult. That's why they have such a hard time making social connections with other people, because it's, I mean, just think of it like this, right? Your mind is working so fast and is processing so much. Mm-hmm. How do you have that conversation with somebody who you would say, 4 or 5 sentences, and they would be looking at you as though you just spoke Greek to them, and they don't know anything, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have that conversation.
You draw pictures?
Yeah, but what if you're not good at pictures?
I mean...
I'm not a good Pictionary person.
Color.
I mean, we can try.
That might be how you do it.
I can't even get inside the lines.
Ooh,
my artistic ability does not exist.
I'm working there, okay? I'm pretty good at them stick figures. I was never artistically gifted, though. No. Some people are. I was not.
I've always had a mindset for debate and intellectual conversation, whereas I was never creative in that aspect. No.
Me neither.
You tell me to draw a picture, I'm going to ask you, what do you want me to draw?
I'm sorry.
Just draw what you want. I don't know, man. I can't even draw a 3D cube.
That's funny you say that. My kid just yesterday was showing me how to draw 3D figures, like cubes and triangles.
I can do. I don't.
They just learned that.
I used to try drawing 3D cubes all the time, and it would always come out like all out of shape and
But how do you mess that up? It's like
I can't artistic anything.
It's literally like a square with lines, and then like almost a full another square with more lines.
So you say this.
I mean, I'm just saying.
In theory. In theory, all of this sounds easy, that's true. Right? I watch people draw stuff, and I'm like, in theory, I understand how you drew that. Okay, but when I attempt to make any sort of resemblance to that,
it's nothing. It's a blob.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what was your 4-year-old draw this? Like, you're like, no, that was me.
You're like, really? Like, actually, no. Yeah, my 4-year-old drew that.
My 11-year-old draws better than me.
There you go.
My
kid probably draws as well as me at this point. He was pretty proud of it, though. And I was proud of him for trying. I said, good job. You're already doing better than I did. Yeah. You're doing okay.
Some people draw. Other people have conversations.
That's what we do. I feel like we do an okay job.
We do enough, I guess.
One day we hope to get to the Joe Rogan level. Insane.
I don't think we'll ever get to the Joe Rogan level. But
that's my goal.
I would like to get to a point where we have 500,000 subscribers.
That would be amazing.
We can have conversations with other intellectual minds
Let's
especially
get
like some of
somebody
these more
that
popular people, right? These
somebody
people on
that
the left.
disagrees with us. Yes,
I definitely would like to have these conversations with people on the left, right?
agree.
I definitely think that there is somewhere in the middle we could find common ground.
Correct.
Of, you know what, I don't agree here, but I can agree with you here, and maybe we can bridge the divide.
That would be wonderful.
But in order to get there, we need people to subscribe. We need people to share the videos here.
We do, yes.
And just if you think we do a good job, give us a like.
Thumbs up.
Give us a comment.
Yeah.
Give us a share.
We
and
might
help us spread the word. And maybe we can get to some of these larger platforms and finally get these conversation topics that are desperately needed.
Yeah. Washington's pretty bad about that right now.
Yeah, I mean,
they're really divided.
We can't have any kind of civil conversation across the aisle, and we have to do something to change that. Because if we don't, we lose a nation.
We do. That's what we're currently experiencing right now. There is so much divide. It's ruining any form of actual. I think it's even ruining science, because science now is completely one-sided. Yeah, it's depending who you are.
Is.
Yeah,
you speak your truth. Well, what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Is the truth or there is not the truth.
Correct.
I shouldn't have my own individual truth, right?
No.
I believe this is what I believe, right? But that doesn't make it true.
Not at all.
Right? That's just my belief.
2 + 2 will always equal 4, but I believe it equals 3. And they're like, okay, for you it will. They were having 3.
So when we talk about the 2 + 2 = 5, right? People were making this sort of comparison of, okay, well, if I give you a math problem, I say I have 2 apples and 2 oranges. How many apples do I have? Right? I don't have 4 apples.
Maybe.
Because I've only got 2. Or they're saying, what if I have 2.5 apples and 2.5 apples? If I add them together, how much do I have? Right? They're starting to add in these partials of a number.
I like
right?
that.
But nobody ever said that, right? The question is 2 + 2 = 4.
Correct.
Right? There is no way to change 2 + 2 = 4 unless you start adding in different numbers or changing the composition of what the question is about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you change the phrasing, then obviously the answer would be different.
Just like we probably should not have a parent in this conversation, because if the teacher's trying to teach them that 2 + 2 = 5, well, by golly, it equals 5.
Yeah, I mean,
for you,
the disingenuous conversation topic that they were trying to do, right? It was a bait and switch.
Correct.
Right? It was they were straw manning it. It's not very fair to have that conversation when you're not even playing on the same field.
No, they're eliminating the fields now. I think it was in New York. You can't have the gifted and talented classes anymore.
They did that in Los Angeles too, I think, or just maybe all of California.
Because it was racist.
Yeah, there was a disparity in outcome.
Crazy, which I found hilarious.
But again, that's all cultural, right? If you change the culture topic in communities, you change what people are willing to learn or do, or what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. That's what this all comes down to. I mean, I really do. It comes down to how can we control you, and not even you.
How can we control your children,
your kids, because you've got your mind made up.
Yeah,
right?
You're too old to change, right?
We can force you to do stuff.
Old dog new tricks kind of thing.
But we can't change your mind, right?
But we can definitely get to your kids with the impressionable young minds.
Correct. That's gross.
And that's
just so weird to think about.
That's what they put us at, right? We are put in this position, and that's why this is such a crucial time to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because you just think about it 20 years ago. 20 years ago, people would stand around the water cooler and talk about what the game last night or the sitcom they were watching, right? There was a friendly camaraderie amongst Americans.
Yay.
And now with the water cooler, what are the topics, right? The politics.
Yep.
And it's nothing but politics. And if your politics don't line with my politics, you can't talk to me.
You're probably a horrible person.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where we're at, and it's a very bad spot to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're at this point where the nation is so divided that there is question of, is there a way to repair it?
I think there is, which I think is hilarious. I think it's the elections coming up. As long as the GOP continues to fight, I guess fight's not the right word, But it is to fight the way that Youngkin fought or ran, I guess. It really did. It had a uniting factor. I mean, if you're far left, man, you're gone. And if you're far right, you're gone. I don't think that's the vast majority of people.
No, I don't think so. I think you have a lot of moderates, a lot of people in between. Mm-hmm. But I think even if Republicans were to make a clean sweep in 2022, they have to be willing to actually enact on that policy.
Correct.
Right. Them sitting on their hands and just saying, well, we're just we won, so we're just going to wait the next 2 years and do it again. Right. That's not effective. It's not going to help.
It's not.
They have to actively engage in politics and do the job that they're supposed to do. Right. Represent the constituents that elected them into that office. If they don't, right, there is no point. And there's no point in them being there. And I guess that's what we get.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we get.
I kind of see that happening.
It most likely will. I mean, Republicans are a group of people that don't actively do a whole ton of things, right? They don't get a lot accomplished. They say
that's true.
We're anti-democratic everything, and
yep. That's enough.
It.
Yeah, that's enough for them,
just
right?
actively being...
That's exactly right.
Just me saying that I don't agree is enough, right? They don't actively put their policies in place. They don't try to.
Would you say the Democrats are different in that they...
The Democrats will do everything they can, right? Oh, they will say...
We love my cat.
If they say they're going to do something, Democrats will do it, right? They will push policy.
And we saw that. They passed that bill. They're going to try to pass that social safety spending bill.
Build Back Better plan.
The Build Back Better plan, yep. That nobody has any idea what's really in it.
Nobody. There is a lot of fluff in that.
But they were trying to pass it as quick as possible, and it was a huge bill.
So,
and I mean, the liberal pundits even came out and said they're doing a horrible job at selling this thing because nobody knows what's in it. And they said that, I mean, a long time ago, and they still haven't done anything to sell it. Because it might be great. I actually don't know. I know it costs a lot of money, and they're trying to tax the crap out of people to pay for it.
Well, them saying that this is not going to cost anybody in taxes is just disingenuous. I mean, Joe Biden finally admitted that inflation was a thing, but this Build Back Better plan was going to alter the inflation, and it was going to make things better, and people underneath $400,000 were not going to owe anything in taxes. And that's just not correct.
So he said that they weren't going to put a gas tax, right? Because a gas tax would impact everybody. But they were going to put a mileage tax.
Yeah, I mean... See, it's just these slick little plays of words, right, that they do.
Yeah.
It's a bait and switch, right? I'm not going to tax your gas prices, but I'm going to tax how many miles you drive every year.
Oh. Isn't that kind of the same concept?
It all goes back to the government always gets what they want.
Bam.
They will take your money whenever they can.
And all these people that said these prices are just temporary, right? And I mean, honestly, they say it's temporary. You ask business owners that have done this for a long time, say anytime prices have jumped, right? Have they ever just gotten back down to where they used to go? And they're like, no, man.
The only time we saw that, though, was during the Trump presidency, where we saw gas drop back down to like $1.80, $1.90 at some places.
Trump's bad, right? We can't talk about Trump.
He did do a great job on the economy, and nobody can fault him on that. He totally did. Right?
I agree.
We all saw what happened, right? People's money, the money that they made every week was awesome. Increasing, right?
Yeah.
We saw
and prices were not increasing because of it. It's a beautiful thing.
Right. And now we're in the situation where we see
there's a name for what's going on right now, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's this idea that wages are going up and then prices are going up. And then wages are going up, and then prices are going up, and they're doing this.
It's a competitive
this back and forth.
It's a competitive inflation of the market.
Usually, in previous times, it's happened in times of prosperity, but right now it's not a time of prosperity, and I forget the name of it. But it's really bad that it's happening because it's impacting the people that make the least.
Yeah,
by far.
The raise you're getting to compensate is not actually compensating anything. I mean,
not at all. It's making everybody more lower class.
Well, that was the whole problem with making a $20 minimum wage, right?
Crazy.
If you do something like that, the business has to increase the cost of the product that they're selling, right? And if they have to increase the cost of what they're selling, the next person who has to come in and buy that product is going to have to spend more money, which means you're just kind of overriding the $20 you just gave them, and everything's just going to cost more.
Correct. And in fact, the people that used to make $20 that used to be worth a lot of money to them are now suddenly the lower.
Yeah, it's reactionary, essentially, is what that is.
Yes, which I know this is kind of off topic, but I always found it funny, those people that are going to the Starbucks and buying like their $7 coffees, and they're like, I'm going to do a good deed for the day, and I'm going to pay for the person behind me, because the person going to Starbucks really needs help, right? They're going to buy that $7 coffee. They're clearly struggle busing.
Yeah.
And then they make news because, I did such a good thing. I paid for their coffee. And I'm like, no, you should probably go down and donate some of your time at like a food shelter or something. But no, by far. If it makes you feel good, and pat yourself on the back for that $7 coffee you paid for that.
If you have to tell somebody about the good deeds you did, you weren't doing it for the right reason.
At all. And
right.
It just sickens me to
if
see
it comes out just because somebody wanted to say what nice thing you did for them, that's different. But if you have to tell people, I donated all this stuff, or I did this, or right, you're doing it just to glorify yourself and get a pat on the back. And that's not the right way to go.
Dude, I think that's how 99% of celebrities and famous people, that's all they do.
Yeah, donate
pat
your time,
themselves
donate your
on the
money.
back, man. Make sure everybody knows about it, too, how good of a person you are.
Yeah. If you're that good of a person, you donate your time, you donate your money, you donate whatever it is.
Say a word.
And you move on, right?
Yep.
You don't make this a huge ordeal. You don't
No.
take your camera with you and have to videotape
you gotta
it.
send out the Snapchats and the hashtags and
look what I did.
I'm so great.
That's
frustrating.
where we're at.
Yeah. Disingenuous is the perfect way to put it. That's exactly what it is.
It's the collapse.
And that's what all these liberals saying, that we're coming out to do this for the bettering of American people. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. Don't buy it.
Yeah,
empty words.
This is the moral collapse in our society that we're seeing right now.
It really is.
And it's not good. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good at all.
That's a really sad thing to get to the end of this show for. Let's make it something positive. Something good. We should have that. Something good that happened in the news this week.
Something good.
Oh, jeez.
What good did happen this week? Anything?
I guess.
I know there's something.
Good is relative. What's good for me, my truth, is not what's good for you.
See, that's what I have to deal with. No, there's plenty of good news that's happened. I just can't think of anything.
The job market was better in October.
Yeah, the job market did. He picked up 591,000 jobs,
which is a lot, more than.
But
he's taking credit. He said, "This is proof that my rules are working." That's what he said. The president. I mean, proof that it was working. Not it. All the months before weren't proof that it was failing.
No, you just. See, that's not very positive either.
I know. I feel bad about that.
Next week we'll come up with something more positive for the end. We'll specifically get a story just to be positive.
A feel-good story. That sounds disingenuous though, because then we're just pushing. There's got to be a way. We'll figure this out. Yeah, we'll figure this out.
All right. Well, I'm your host Daniel,
and I'm Miles.
And if you know, you know.
And if you don't, you need to ask somebody who does.
We'll see you next weekend when we do another podcast. Go ahead and give us a like.
Ding.
Give us a share.
Yay.
Send us a comment.
All of the things.
And we will see you later.
We will. Bye, guys.
Bye.